Okay. Oh, Yitzhak just left. Sorry, I can't do it now.
Can you see?
Okay. I'll tell Yitzhak to come. Oh, Yitzhak. Yitzhak, you want to bring that small pack of open locks from the fridge? Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to begin. Okay, we're going to begin the class, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us. A little bit. There we go. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is important to study about the Beis HaMikdash, about the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple, we all know this is the most sacred place on earth, the Kotel, the Western Wall. Many of us have gone to the Kotel, have gone to the Western Wall. You know, they say the Prime Minister of Israel was meeting with the President of the United States, and they went to pray at the Western Wall. So the President of Israel says to the President of the U.S., well, what have you been praying for? So he says, I've been praying for peace. He says, and how do you feel afterwards? He says, I feel like I was talking to a wall. Anyway, this is the Western Wall. Many of us here have visited the Western Wall. Some of us went on a trip. We went last year. We were actually there. And some of the places we're going to see now are part of that. Now, I have to be honest. This class that I'm teaching today is actually supposed to be a 3-part class, and we're going to pack it into one. So I'm going to move along quickly. There's no handouts for today. I'm going to move along quickly, so I need you all to, as they say in Yiddish, to halt cup. You ever heard that term, halt cup? Halt cup means to stay with me, to keep track. Halt cup. Never heard that term, halt cup? Halt cup means, literally means hold your head. Halt cup, that's the word. Halt. I'm talking like an American Yiddish. Okay. So this is the Western Wall. This is what we know of the temple. But the truth is that there is so much more to the Beis HaMikdash, to the temple, that is that's not there. Now, why are we doing this now? We're now in a period known as the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks. One second. This is Yitzchak Rabin, Moshe Dayan, and Uzi Narkis. They enter the Old City right after the IDF victory in 1967. That was the first time in 2,000 years that the Jewish people had control of the Western Wall.
אני יורד ברגע זה אני יורד כמה מדרגות אל הכותל. אינני אדם דתי, מעולם לא הייתי, אבל זהו הכותל, ואני נוגע באבני הכותל המערבי.
Okay, so now what did he say? He said, I'm descending in this moment, the steps of the Kotel. He says, I am not a religious man, and never was, but this is the Kotel, and I'm now touching the stones of the Western Wall. That was Yitzchak Rabin's voice. So he's saying, even though I'm not a religious Jew, I know every Jew is moved when seeing the Kotel. This is Prime Minister Levi Eshkol at the Kotel in 1967. This is the IDF paratroopers. They arrived in the Kotel in 1967. And you can see how moved they are. Now, this is actually the Kotel that was many years before that. This is going back to the Kotel from the late 1800s. You can see over here that there was actually a wall that was removed, right? The Muslims had tried to block it off. This is the Jews praying by the Kotel. Again, going back probably around the 1800s, maybe early 1900s. And finally, this is what the Kotel is today. So why is it that we are studying about the temple now? So this time during the period of the 3 weeks is a time that both Beis Hamikdash, both temples were destroyed. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh Av, Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av, Rosh Chodesh of the month of Av. In the month of Av, both temples, both Batei Mikdashot were destroyed on the 9th of Av. This is considered somewhat a time of mourning. We don't eat meat, we don't eat certain things during these 9 days because of that. However, the Talmud tells us, the Medrash says, Amar Yechezkel Lufnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yechezkel said before the Holy One, blessed be He, Master of the universe, through this moment we have been exiled in the land of those that hate us. Yet you say to me that I should go and tell Israel the form of the temple and write it down before their eyes so that they should preserve it, preserve its form and its laws. Are they liable to do this? Let it be until they come out of exile, then I'll go and tell them. Because God told Yechezkel that he told him a prophecy of what the Beis Hamikdash would look like. He said, why are you telling me to tell this to them? They're going into exile now. Blessed be he gets said to the Yechezkel, just because my children are exiled, should I let the building of my house be brought to naught? The Blessed Holy One said, reading about the Torah is as great as actually building it. Go tell them that they should involve themselves with reading about the form of the temple in the Torah. And as a reward for involving themselves in this reading about it, I will count it for them as if they had actually involved in building the temple. So God tells Moses, says the Medrash, tells Yechezkel, Ezekiel, that if we involve ourselves of studying, learning about the Beis Hamikdash, about the temple, then that itself will be considered as if we are involved in actually building it. And so that's why it's so important, especially during this time, the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, to learn about it. And especially today, we're coming closer and closer to the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. Today, the Jewish people are able to go on the Temple Mount, albeit it's not halachically acceptable, but there are Jewish people that go on the Temple Mount. This is something that was fought for, and the Temple Mount itself is still technically under Jordanian control. which is it's a bit complicating exactly how that works. But the idea is to study about the Beis Hamikdash. So we're first going to begin with a brief history about it. We're going to speak about the Temple Mount, where the temple was built, and then we'll talk about different aspects of the construction, and then we'll go into the Beis Hamikdash itself. Yeah.
How tall is the Temple Mount?
I'll show you everything. Maish, you want to hit the air down 2 notches right there? You're cold? Everyone's cold? All right, so it's only down 2 notches. Just 2 down, yeah, perfect.
Make it cold?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Colder?
You guys are all cold? Okay, everyone's cold, forget it.
Come home.
All right.
I'm not gonna get him. Come back.
So this, my friends, is what the second temple looks like. This is a model of the second temple, which is in a sort of museum. It's not really a museum. It's like an outdoor model that you could find in Jerusalem. And they built this so you could actually see what this looks like, what Jerusalem looked like back in the day. Now, it really began first with the tabernacle. What's the tabernacle? The tabernacle, the Torah says, "V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham." You shall make for me a mikdash, a Beis Hamikdash, makes me a temple, v'shachanti b'tocham, and I will dwell in them. And it's interesting that the Torah uses the term, and I will dwell in them. This is to tell you that we, each and every person, is a temple, is a Beis Hamikdash in a certain extent. And for about 480 years, this was the Mishkan. And even once they had it for the 40 years while they were in the desert, and then roughly about another 40 years, about 400 years after that, the Mishkan had many travels where it went to. It was Nov, Shiloh. Some of these places you can still visit today, of where the Mishkan actually stood. You could go visit the place of the Mishkan in Shiloh and in other places. And some of you are learning the history of what's the Kings. You're learning Kings 1, Kings 2. So before that, prior to that, you had the Nevi'im, you had the prophets, right? You were learning about that. And most of what happened then happened during the time when they still had a Mishkan. For example, the famous story about Hannah, which we read on Rosh Hashanah, story of Hannah going and praying for her child, and her child was Samuel, Prophet Samuel. She went to pray by the Mishkan, which was then situated in Nov. So for about 400 years, we assume that as soon as they came into Israel, they built the temple. That's not the case. About 400 years, they were still using the tabernacle, which was the mobile home of the Beis Hamikdash. Eventually, King Solomon built the first temple. It looks something roughly like this. There are details about it, and it talks about what they went through to build the Beis Hamikdash. It talks about how the thousands of workers that they had to put it, and the marble and the stone and the gold. And it's beautifully described in the book of Kings, which some of you are learning. This was in the year 349 BCE, and it stood for 410 years, and eventually it was destroyed. Then the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The first Beis Hamikdash, the first temple. This is a arrowhead unearthed from Jerusalem from the Babylonians. They're the ones that destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. There's not much left of the first temple, but there is some archaeology that's still being found. As we speak now, they are still unearthing much more stuff in the archaeology. Then they came and they rebuilt the temple, and they came back with Ezra and Nehemiah and some of the other prophets. They came back from Babylonia to rebuild the temple. Only about a fifth of the Jewish people actually came back to rebuild the second temple, which was a bit sad. It was a bit tragic at the time. But many of the Jews decided not to return to the land of Israel. But those who did, they rebuilt the temple, and that temple stood for 420 years. It's interesting that was King Cyrus is the one that gave them permission to go, and it is actually connected with the Purim story. The Purim story happened 70 years after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, of the first temple, and then Esther, as we know, married Achashverosh, and then it was from her children where the Jewish people were given permission to go back and rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And so they were led by Ezra, Nehemiah, and some of the other prophets who went and rebuilt the second temple, knowing exactly where the location is. It has to be built in the exact location, which is going to become a bit of an issue, as we'll see. Now, this is a satellite image of the Temple Mount area. Now, you can't really see much from there, but we'll zoom in a little bit. That is what the Temple Mount looks like today. In order to build the Beis Hamikdash, you have to know the exact spot of the altar, of the Mizbeach. And we're going to show you what the altar is. So that's one issue. Now, it is assumed that this, which is the Dome of the Rock, which we're going to take a look at soon, is where the Holy of Holies stood, but that's not necessarily the case. In other words, many people assume that to be the case, but it's not necessarily true. So I just want to get that out of the way. I know many people think that it's not necessarily true. So we're going to take a few views of the Temple Mount. But first, yeah. I'm going to show you. Don't worry. Huh? The Western Wall. The West. East, West. You'll see. I'll show you. Now, what is so special about the Temple Mount? Why is it so significant? This is known as Har HaMoriah, Mount Moriah, the Har HaBayit. Our sages teach us that this is a Makam Ra'oi, a worthy place, a place that is worthy of being the place where the Beis Hamikdash is. It's 2,400 feet above sea level. It's not such an impressively high mountain, but there are some great things that happen there. What are some things that happen there? We believe that this is the place where the creation of the world began, where God took the first man, took Adam, take from the earth to this place. It's from this place where Adam brought his first offering to God. It's from this location where Cain and Abel brought their. It says this place where Abraham offered Yitzchak as a sacrifice. It's from this place where Jacob had his dream. As we know, as he was leaving his father's home and he had a dream on the way, this was a place where he had a dream. Many other things throughout history happened in this place, happened in this mountain. Here's a few more views from the mountain. This is from the Kidron Valley, which is right outside the wall. This is from the Mount of Olives. You can see the Mount of Olives there with all the cemetery that's there. This is something that's personal to me. The next one, this is from Mount Scopus. This synagogue is called the Heth Synagogue. This was built by my grandparents on the Hebrew University. They built that shul right at the edge of the Hebrew University, which is called Mount Scopus. And what's interesting is you'll notice in the front of the shul, there's windows there. You see those windows? So those windows, this is what it looks like from the inside. This side over here is where the ark is. Unlike most synagogues where the ark is right in front, over here right in front, they put big windows, and the arks are in the side. Why? Because if you look right down there, it's hard to see it from the picture, but if you look right down, you're looking right down on the Temple Mount. So it's still in use today, yes, and I had a bar mitzvah there as well. So it was very, very special having a bar mitzvah in that location, looking right down on the Temple Mount. So, so that's from the Kidron Valley, the Har Zeitim, and over here you could see some ancient house ruins that some archaeologists dug up, dating back 3,500 years to the time of King David HaMelech. As I said, there's still major excavations. Anything that I'm showing you now, if it's out, is about 2-3 years out. Since then, they've done tremendous excavations, especially during COVID, where they had tons of stuff. So even what I'm showing you now is a bit outdated as far as the excavations go. This over here you could see is a West Side Road, known as a Tyropian Way. And this is the west side of the Temple Mount, and where was there was a street there. And this is at the present-day Damascus Gate, known as Shar Shechem. And it ran southwards along the western wall of the Temple Mount. So it shows us a little bit of what sort of the life was then. Then you had Western Jerusalem. This is the western side, and now you can see where we are. So this is all what we would call the Jewish quarter. Some of it is Jewish, that's the Muslim quarter. Some of this is the Jewish quarter, and that is the Western Wall. So now you can see where the Western Wall is compared to where the Dome of the Rock is, which is one of the reasons that it's very hard to believe that this is where the Holy of Holies stood, because as we'll see, the Holy of Holies would have been much closer to that area over there. Which is why, if you wanted to know why it's you'll see that there are Jewish people that go up to the Temple Mount. This is why it's problematic, because if you're not allowed to go in certain areas unless you know exactly where you're going. According to Jewish law, you're not allowed to go in that area of the Holy of Holies, right?
What's that? Is it right at the line?
This building? This?
No, the first.
This here?
No,
Where you were the first.
This?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Dome of the Rock.
Okay.
This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Mosque.
Al-Aqsa Mosque.
The whole.
And I'll show you why the Al-Aqsa Mosque is significant, because that actually shows us where the entranceway to the temple once stood. It's at the area of where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is where the entranceway to the temple, to the temple area. Sorry, yeah.
What's on the other side of the Western Wall? It's just like trees up there. Is that what it is?
The other,
That's all.
Yeah.
Right behind the-
Trees.
They're right behind the Western Wall.
these are houses.
No, behind the wall.
The trees here?
There, is that?
It's just an open space, but I'll soon show you where that was in comparison to the temple.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
at one point, you just pointed to where right to the left of the wall, there's an open spot right there. And
This?
Well, not that far over, right there.
Yeah, I'm going to show you what that is.
When I was there in 72, we were able to go in, and that's where they felt that they would find.
You could still go in there, and I'm going to show you exactly what that is. I'm going to show you what that is and what's the significance of that. Okay, let's continue on, and you'll see. Okay, so now when we talk about the wall that we have, and this all remains. Okay, so all we have here, this whole square here, right? A lot of it, not the whole thing, but a lot of it is remains of the Second Temple era, right? So now when we talk about the Western Wall is an outer wall of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so basically, this was basically the Beis HaMikdash, okay? And this square was there, and then you had the Holy Temple was actually inside. So these were outer walls that went around the temple. And this whole construction was done by a man named Herod. This is a bust of Herod. Herod is an interesting story of why he exactly what he did. First, he was a crazy man, and he did everything they did was crazy. So one day he could murder out 300 rabbis, and the next day say, I have to make them the most beautiful temple ever. And that was Herod. So he wanted to build them the most beautiful temple that they ever had. And that's what he did. It was the Talmud goes into detail of how beautiful it was. It says that there were the beautiful marble floors. They were blue. It says it looked like the sea. The color marble that he had the floor. He wanted to cover it with gold, and they said, no, it's so beautiful the way it is. Leave it. This is Acre. This is another Herodian time building. One second. This is Masada. Masada is also a Herodian era structure. Caesarea, however you pronounce it. Caesarea. In Hebrew, it's Caesarea. Those are also Herodian time structure. So we see a lot of similarities in the styles. You wanted to add something?
No, I was just telling you.
Okay. So these are these are the type of things that Herod built. And so a lot of the construction that we have, the historical construction that when you go visit Israel, and some of you took, we took some of those. Remember the famous aqueduct? We went on the first day. That's also during that period. So a lot of that is from the Herodian period with the Romans. So a lot of interesting story behind that whole thing, but that's not for now. So now you have to remember this is basically what the second temple looked like with the entire space around it, right? And you'll notice these big open areas, and we're going to go through everything and explain what it is. Now, it was built as a plateau construction like this, because remember, it's a mountain. It's going on a slope. So he had to flatten it all out, and he had to make a flat top in order to build that kind of structure. He made it as a plateau. What's the reason that he made it as a plateau? Because because there's always a concern when it comes to the temple. There's a concern of tuma, impurity, and especially when it comes to tumas mace, impurity of a dead carcass, right? So when you have a structure that is covering up with this, like this, that's called an ohel. It's called a tent. A tent contains the impurity to that spot. So that's why they were built in this way with these plateaus up on top of each other, one on top of each other. This way, if there's any impurity, then impurity is contained to that spot that's there. Now, if someone was under there with it, they would become impure, but not anyone on top. Whereas if it's open, the impurity goes straight up. You follow? Okay. So we see some of this plateau construction. This is some of what you could see today. It's a little hard to see from here, but you see there's like these little domes that they're continuing to unearth. Now they have the outer walls. So let's talk about the outer walls. We have the western wall is the one that is the back of the temple. Now, why is this important? Because, of course, we pray today at the western wall. Now, what's all the way at the back here? That is the Holy of Holies. That's the holiest place of the temple, is alongside the western wall. So that means that where we pray today is closest to the holiest part of the temple. So we're not facing the temple. We're actually facing the back of the temple, but that is the holiest part of the temple. And so that's why it's important that when we talk about the Western Wall, for Jewish people, it was always important that if you're going to pray, the closest place that you could pray within the temple would be the one which is closest to the Holy of Holies. That's where we went to pray. So that is the western wall where we pray, well, though, albeit a little bit to the left. Now you'll see, based on this, the location of the temple, of the Kotel. Okay, so you see it's a very, very large wall, right? It's a very large wall. And so the location of the Kotel is just that little square right there, compared to how big the wall is today. And they're continuing to unearth more and more of the wall, but this is, as far as the Kotel, just that little spot there. Now that arch over there, which we'll soon see, is that you could actually walk in there today.
Any idea how long it took to build?
Yes, it's something. I forget, something like 180 days. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, it is brought down. How long? It was relatively quick for the time, because he got thousands of workers and he wanted to do it very quickly. Union. Okay, now we have the northern wall. This is what the northern wall would have looked like from inside the Temple Mount. And then you have the some of the information that we know about this is from Josephus. You have the southern wall, where there is a walkway and a large public complex. As you see, the southern wall was the main entrance. You see, there was a walkway here to get into the main entrance, because this is where the front entrance of the temple was. So if you were to come in through there, and then this is the eastern wall, and we're soon going to explain some aspects of the eastern wall, which you could even see today. And so now let's talk, and then there's the southern wall. So now let's talk about the southern wall. The southern wall is probably the most that we have as far as excavation goes today. And this is where the main entrance to the Beis HaMikdash was, meaning those that came in from the side. This is what it looks like today. So a lot of it is still there. And a lot of people would come through the southern wall. This is a mikvah. Now, what we see about this mikvah is something very significant. That you see that in this mikvah, there's two sides to go. You could go in either side, either up or down, right? You could go up the stairs. And the reason that they did that back in the day, they did not want that the one that's going into the mikvah should come out of the same side, because you wanted that you going in impure, coming out pure from the other side, because you don't want the one that's impure to make the other one impure as well. So those mikvahs were built in an open way like this, that you're coming in from both, you're going in one side and going out the other side. So this shows us that we could actually see, and this is the Talmud talks about this, having two sides, one to walk in and one to walk out of the ancient mikvah. This is a mikvah, again, that was found in the south of the Temple Mount. Okay, so now these are the temple entrances. So there were five, the Mishnah tells us the temple had 5 gates. You had the 2 Huldah gates on the south side that served as the entrance and exit to the Temple Mount. The Kifinus gate on the west that serves as the entrance and exit. The Tadi gate on the north, which served no purpose. And the eastern gate, wherein the castle of Shushan was sculptured, through which the high priest who burned the red heifer and all the priests that assisted therein went forth on the Mount of Olives. This is the eastern. So these are the gates that were here. The 5 gates. I'm going to go through them in detail soon. And then this is the eastern gate, as we said, which went out to the Mount of Olives. Now, this is what the eastern gate looks like today. And you'll notice that what do you have in front of this? A cemetery. This is not a Jewish cemetery. This is a Muslim cemetery. Why do they put a Muslim cemetery there? Because we have tradition that Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, is going to come to announce Mashiach's coming from, and this is also what we said called the Shushan Gate. We mentioned that before. So we have a tradition that Eliyahu Hanavi is going to announce Mashiach's coming through the Eastern Gate. So what did they do? First of all, they closed it off. Then they put a cemetery, and they said, Eliyahu, he's a Kohen. He can't go through a cemetery, so he can't announce Mashiach's coming. They didn't really know Jewish law too well because it doesn't really apply for a non-Jewish cemetery. But either way, I'm sure he could find a way to get in. Some refer to it as well. This is from the inside, what it looks like till today. There is a mosque inside there. And so obviously Jews are not allowed to go in, of course. So this is what it looks like today. So it's still there. Those gates are still fully intact. Then we have the eastern entrance. And you could see still a little bit of the eastern entrance. You could see a little bit of a doorway there. This is the view from the Kidron Valley. And this is what you see over here. This little arch over here is known as Shar HaRachamim, the Mercy Gate. This is what we have. It seems to be from Byzantine styles. This was known as the Gate of Mercy. This is the other side, the northern entrance. Sorry. This is called the Tadi Gate, which also had a very unique shape. And now we're going to go on to the west side, the western entrance, which is also what we have a lot of still today as far as excavations go. So this is the western entrance. And from here you have a number of gates. You have the Kifinis Gate, which is also called Warren's Gate. And then you have the Wilson's Arch. So let's go through this. So this is entrance number 1. It's very hard to see, but that's what it looks like. That's what's known as Warren's Gate or the Gate of Kifinis. This led to an underground tunnel about 50 feet long that went straight to the holy area of the Holy of Holies. Now we do have tradition that King Solomon hid the Ark under the Holy of Holies. We do know for a fact that there are tunnels under there. No one has actually found the Ark to be there, but we do know for a fact that there are tunnels there. Of course, it could only be accessed by Muslims. Now, over here, this is what's known as Wilson's Arch because it was discovered by a man named Wilson. And over here, what actually was this Wilson's Arch shows that there was a roadway that went on top to be able to go into the Temple Mount, which is sort of what we have today. And so there was this arch that allowed for the road to go under as well. And this right here is where the Temple Mount is. Okay, so now you can see what it looks like today. So we still have this part of it. We still have that today. And that is in Jewish hands. So this is a Wilson's Arch that's there. And then the road that goes on top of it. And this is what it looks like inside. You could actually go and pray under there. And that's the men's section of the Western Wall is inside. So you could access it for the men's section, or if you're taking a tour, women could access that area as well. So this is the western entrance today. Then we have, and then this was another gate that's known as the Barclays Gate. which was another way to enter into the tunnel. Then over here we have, this became known as Robinson's Arch. Robinson's Arch because, again, it was discovered by a man named Robinson. And this was the corner of the Beis HaMikdash. And I'll show you something that was found at that corner as well. But this was also another way. You see that there were these stairs leading up to there. This is a better image of it, to the Robinson's Arch. So a lot of this, like I said, this is what it looks like today. You could see the archway there. So you could still see some of the archway that was there towards the entrance of the Holy of Holies. There's a better view of it. This is all, if you go to the Temple Mount, when we went the first time on that Wednesday, if you remember, when we first went to the temple, that pathway, if you're coming from the south side, you could see all this. This is still there. Just like this, it's open, you could see it. Now, next time you go, you'll know what you're looking at. Okay, this is some of the destruction below. You can see some of the stones that fell down from the archway over the years. So this is basically what, and then so that's the western side. Then you have the eastern side. So the eastern side, the southern side. So on the southern side, you could go directly to the Hulda entrance. You had to climb up 30 stairs, and you would enter what was known as the Hulda entrance. We had the Hulda tunnels. These are the stairs going up. This is still, you can still see a lot of it today. You could see all the posts and the archways. That was the entranceway right there. That was the southern entrance. And that would be the exit as well. And they would go into what was called the Hulda tunnels. What was the idea of the Hulda tunnels? As we mentioned, the Temple Mount was 100 feet above street level. And to go in, you would have to climb the monumental staircase that they had and go through these tunnels. These tunnels said a lot about what was happening then, because this also tells us a lot of what was going on during the time of the Beis HaMikdash. So you see, these are some of the old columns that were found. These are Roman columns, so we know that they're from Roman times. And they go into these tunnels. As I said, a lot of it is now not accessible to Jewish people, but it is there. You could see some of these. And then this is basically what it looks like, the Hulda tunnels going through. Again, as you see, everything was built with arches, as we mentioned before. This is the Hulda pathway that went towards the Temple Mount. And now I'm going to open up the slide. 1 second. And here you could see basically what it would have been like back then. Coming in through the main entranceway. Now, those Hulda tunnels, this was also a place that people could, that was seemingly when you would first walk in there, this is what the Temple Mount looks like today. See this open area. You see there's a few Roman holes that are still there. Second. And this is what was known as a royal basilica. And this was a view from inside the Temple Mount. So if you're walking up to the Temple Mount, you would have to walk through there. And there's a big open area here. What was that open area? So it was basically a market. Why do you have a market? Sort of like a shopping mall. And we know this because the Talmud says like this. Talmud says, one should avoid showing disrespect to the eastern gate because it's a direct line with the Holy of Holies. A man should not enter the Temple Mount with his staff or with his shoes on or with his wallet, with his feet dust covered, and make it a shortcut or spitting on it, etc. So we say you're not allowed to carry a bundle of money to the Temple Mount. It shouldn't appear like a place of commerce. But so therefore they had this basilica, which didn't have the sanctity of the temple. And why did you need that? maybe not everyone had doves on them if they had to bring a turtle dove as an offering, or maybe not everyone had flour, or maybe not everyone had goats or any kind of sacrifices that you needed. There's all kinds of things. You needed wine. You needed all kinds of stuff for your sacrifices. You needed to carry a lulav on the holidays. So there's all kinds of stuff that you needed. So they had a market there by the Beis Hamikdash to be able to buy some of those things. So we see the remains of the basilica with the roofs and the stone. You could see the stone columns that were there, and that was towards the entranceway going in. And so over here you could see where what it would have looked like, this big marketplace coming into the temple, and we still have remains of this basilica till today. This is what it looks like inside, of course, the mosque. Now we know this whole image, okay, is not a Muslim design. It's a Roman design. So where they're praying is in a Roman-built section. That's where that's where they have a mosque there. But they have these pillars today. They have this mosque there, and this was the basilica. This was the marketplace that they had going into the temple, and that's still standing today.
Wasn't the basilica built before the Roman era? Herod was before.
Herod was during the Roman era. When you talk about the Roman era, I mean, you're talking a long time. It was during that period. It was basically basically the Roman. Now here's some lintel fragments that we see from that time. You have over here a inscription, which it says the word Zikanin. You see, you can also see the word Bayit. Hard to see, but Zikanin.